Welcome to the module on video storytelling as you need to produce a video story of your project. My name is Peter Cohen and I'm the Director of Management 103. This module lasts about 30 minutes. Of this time, 25 minutes are video. Why a video story? Videos are powerful platforms which can often create a persuasive experience for the listener. Let's go to the 9 principles of telling a great story. And then let's see how well these principles are applied. The principles are indicated above, and I will go through each of them first, and then you can apply them to your project. Principle 1. For any video, you need to decide a focus. What customer or stakeholder needs a solution? Principle 2. You need to have details in every video. Details leave room for the imagination and force the audience to fill in the blanks. If I show you details, your brain will engage to make sense of them. Principle 3. Remember, less is more. Less leaves us wanting more. Less also pushes us to make sense of what's there. Leaving out details at the beginning only to surprise the audience at the end by revealing them when the connection matters is highly satisfying, as a fine cup of coffee accompanied by a chocolate torte. Principle 4. Remember to be authentic. People read BS easily. Authenticity equals credibility. Authenticity still leaves room for fiction. Sometimes the fictional content is more authentic, as deep truths can be disguised in many skins. Principle 5. Remember, we are pattern recognition machines. Connections between mental representations is at the core of cognition. The act of revealing connections is the act of creating meaning for an audience. Principle 6. Transformations are particularly satisfying because they naturally reincorporate previous parts of the story into a meaningful conclusion. Transformations also mark turning points when things change and can set a new drama in motion by breaking up the previously established status quo. Principle 7. Remember to show emotion. We experience life on an emotional level. Much of our internal experience is full of emotional content. Principle 8. And of course, show action, as action propels things forward. Every action has a reaction. When we view action, we wonder what is to come. And the last principle is passion. Sharing your passion is compelling, both because it may be intrinsically interesting and because your personal interest will shine through. Why are you doing this project? Here is the list of design principles. I would recommend that you print this page out. It's a PDF file in Canvas. I will show you the Embrace story in a few minutes. Check off the principles as you listen to see how they apply. Then use the same scoring sheet for yourself as you create your own video. However, before showing you the Embrace video, I'd like to review the narrative curve shown on this slide. The key to creating a great video story is to follow a story narrative. You start with a problem. That's in the left box of your lean canvas. You then show your POV. You then discuss your POV. You then show your solution. And then show the customer value proposition. You have that in your lean canvas as well. And then finally, the stakeholder value. Let's follow this narrative curve more closely by breaking the Embrace video into each of these components. Listen to the videos in the next 4 slides and see how each part of the video matches the narrative curve. Also observe if the presenter followed the 9 story design principles.
And open your hands. Now imagine what you could place in your hands. An apple? Maybe your wallet? Now open your eyes. What about a life? What you see here is a premature baby. He looks like he's resting peacefully, but in fact he's struggling to stay alive because he can't regulate his own body temperature. This baby is so tiny he doesn't have enough fat on his body to stay warm. Sadly, 20 million babies like this are born every year around the world. 4 million of these babies die annually. But the bigger problem is that the ones who do survive grow up with severe long-term health problems. The reason is because in the first month of a baby's life, its only job is to grow. Of other similar stories like this, my team and I realized what was needed was a local solution, something that could work without electricity, that was simple enough for a mother or a midwife to use, given that the majority of births still take place in the home. We needed something that was portable, something that could be sterilized and reused across multiple babies, and something ultra low cost compared to the $20,000 that an incubator in the US costs. So this is what we came up with. What you see here looks nothing like an incubator. It looks like a small sleeping bag for a baby. You can open it up completely. It's waterproof. There's no seams inside, so you can sterilize it very easily. But the magic is in this pouch of wax. This is a phase change material. It's a wax-like substance with a melting point of human body temperature, 37 degrees Celsius. You can melt this. The price point will be $25. Less than 0.1% of the cost of a traditional incubator. Over the next 5 years, we hope to save the lives of almost 1 million babies. But the longer-term social impact is a reduction in population growth. This seems counterintuitive, but turns out that as infant mortality is reduced, population sizes also decrease because parents don't need to anticipate that their babies are going to die. We hope that the embrace...
By now, you should understand the narrative curve. Now the next step is to create your own storyboard. Just get started. You are not writing a novel. Give yourself permission to create a crummy draft in the beginning. Remember, the best flowers are fertilized by poo. The next 3 videos will give you background on how to create a great video story.
Hey there. I'm here to talk to you about the importance of storyboarding. Storyboards are tiny drawings that show each scene of your film, basically a blueprint of your movie. They can help you keep your budget down by knowing exactly what you need to shoot and help translate your vision to the rest of your crew. Now let's start with the basics. It's important when drawing your boards to number each scene. It's a good idea to number your shots so you don't get confused later. When a shot is one motion that requires multiple boards, create a secondary numbering system. For example, if your first shot requires 3 boards in motion, label them 1A, 1B, and 1C. Make sure you draw your actors in frame and have a clear and consistent background. Feel free to draw outside of your frame as well if you're feeling constricted. When showing a camera movement, there are a number of different ways to draw motion, from arrows, to motion lines, to multiple frames. These are just a few of the basic guidelines for making storyboards. Experiment and have fun, but remember to make it clear. Good luck!
All right, kids, this is Chapter 2, and in Chapter 2 we're going to discuss storyboarding. And it's important that you treat this project of yours like an animated feature and not like a live action feature. And the reason is, if you treat it like an animated feature, you're going to storyboard everything. No matter how mundane it is, if it's a shot, it gets storyboarded. Whereas with a live action movie, what you do is typically storyboard the big action sequences, the bus blowing up, the bad guy getting away and the good guy chasing him. You would storyboard those sequences. But with an animated short, sometimes a 30-second shot can take 2 months of work to do. And it would be an awful shame if you decided in editing that shot wasn't needed. Now, it's important to storyboard everything because it'll help you figure out the flow. And the flow is very important for an animated short. Now, a really cool thing about storyboards is that they don't have to look good. You know, if you're an artist, that's great. But if you're not, even better. The more loosely drawn your storyboards are, the more open to interpretation they become later on. And this becomes much more important when you start working with collaborators. As an example of this, look at Martin Scorsese's storyboards on the Taxi Driver DVD. You know, they're worse than this. I mean, they're just stick figures, and they're really rough, and it doesn't matter what the storyboards look like. That's not what your movie's going to look like. So just take the time, you know, sketch them out, and another thing, do them in pen, not pencil. With pencil, you're tempted to go back and keep, you know, erasing and fine-tuning the storyboards, whereas with pen, it's almost like setting it in stone. It makes you have to move on to the next one. You can't erase anything. All you can do is kind of scribble something out. So doing it in pen keeps you moving. Now let me show you a couple of the Surreality 2 storyboards that I'm working on. So we'll start with the first page here, and on the first page you can see we have Jeff is finally stopping him, asserting himself, and getting the pancakes this time. Sometimes I use little like Batman POW blocks sometimes to indicate action. And then he finally gets the pancakes and he's so happy. Look how happy he is. This little arrow here means that the character is exiting and going out of frame. So he eats them and then he burps and then he realizes, oh no, math test in 60 seconds. So he runs out of frame. Then we push in for the credits, and you see the push in. I just do a couple of boxes around that, and we see the credit sequence. So then we repeat the garage shot where he opens the garage and looks around, and then we go. He finds a cowboy walking. So he draws a little pirate sketch, which comes to life. Credits. All right, boys and girls, that concludes Chapter 2. I will see you in Chapter 3, Hand-Drawn Animation.
Earlier today, it's all about cooperate, organize, realize every time. If you don't do it every time, there's no point to it. There's no point to it at all. If you don't build a core, you're not going to have a foundation. If you don't have a foundation, you're not going to have level 2, level 1, level 3. You're not going to have anything. It all comes down to this. That's why we call it core. Because that's where you start. Not just the foundation, but the core. Now, are there any questions? None. Fantastic. Moving on. As you realize, every time, you must be in the moment. You cannot just pass it by. You can't just watch it idly slip by. If you do, you spend your entire life. You can't just do it. Because time and
Here are some of the templates which we will be using in class. You can use these or find some of your own. These templates are already in Canvas. Okay, so now we have a story. Let's make the video. I will review some keys to making a good one. Some great how-to information can be found in the story guide by Drew Keller. I attended a 2-day course he put together in Florida. You can go to his website to find even more. I've included some of his key learnings in this module. I've also included some videos from Courtney Way, who discusses how to make a video using an iPhone. Let's begin with how to shoot your video. Remember that the environment is part of the shot, just not the audience. What's the background here, and what is the story telling you? How about the background here? What does the background tell you? And how about here? Is the background appealing? And how about this? Okay, I think you're beginning to get it. In the next slide, Drew talks about some camera basics: focal length, camera height, and the rule of thirds.
Your audience passes judgment on your message before you even open up your mouth. Hi, my name is Drew Keller, and the environment tells part of your story. And where you set your video is a critical choice in the process. Because you see, the setting is in essence a character, a part of your story, and it gives your audience important cues. Cues like social status, values, interests. It tells your audience whether the person is organized or chaotic. The location adds credibility to both the messenger and the message. How you use the camera also gives cues to your audience so that they know how they should feel about your messenger. One consideration is, well, how do you frame your subject in their environment?
Where the camera is placed in relation to the subject greatly affects the way the viewer perceives that subject. For example, an extreme wide shot is generally used for setting a scene. A wide shot shows the entire person or building. It's intended to place them in relation to their surroundings. You're giving a general impression rather than specific information. A medium wide shot balances the subject and their environment. Sometimes called a cowboy or an American shot, it conveys context between your hero and location. The medium shot is just that, neither close nor far away. Medium shots are great at showing body language and can be used to represent importance and power. The medium close-up is what you're likely to use most often. This reduces the importance of the background, the subjects not competing for attention with their environment. With the close-up, you tightly frame a person or an object. The shot is most often used when your subject is emotional or describes an intense personal event. The closer you frame your subject, the less importance you place on the environment.
Another important consideration is the height of your camera in relation to your subject.
There's a psychology to camera height, and it shapes your intended point of view. Viewers interpret meaning in the camera's eye level. For example, a low-angle shot makes a subject look powerful or threatening. Even moving the camera so it's only slightly below your subject's eye line will have an effect on your audience. Set the camera low to make someone seem important. Unfortunately, it's not always an attractive shot. Shooting down on a subject is more flattering, but it diminishes their importance to the viewer. This angle gives a message that they have less power or are vulnerable. A high-angle shot makes the subject look very small or weak. Think children or pets. Most every parent shoots their kid from this vantage point. Generally, the best height for shooting is the subject's eye level.
The third consideration is how do you place your subject in the frame, centered or off-center?
Off-center is guided by something called the rule of thirds. It's the foundation for well-balanced and interesting images. Sure, it's a formula, but it's a good place to start to increase the visual interest in your story. So what is the rule? Imagine your screen is divided into thirds, horizontally and vertically. Think tic-tac-toe. The intersection of these imaginary lines suggests 4 options for placing your center of interest. It's a simple rule, really. Pick an intersection and put the center of your subject there. Why is it a good idea to use this rule? Centering your image is both visually boring and often creates confusion. Using the rule of thirds will produce video that is tight and well composed. You've created a more interesting shot, and you've told the viewer what you want them to look at in your composition. So when you frame your shot, ask yourself these questions. What's the main point of interest? Where am I placing it?
By mastering the art of framing and position, you can successfully give your audience your intended cues. That means you've set them up to receive your message.
Okay, now let's look at hardware you need to create your story. I will focus on creating your video with your cell phone. The examples and videos are shown using an iPhone, but I am sure this can be equally done using an Android platform. But there are a few instructional videos on how to do this. In just a few minutes, you will have enough skills to be able to create a really great video. Let's begin with how to use your iPhone.
Okay, to start off, you want to go to the settings menu and tell the phone what to record because it default to 1080 30 frames per second. But we want to shoot in 4K for this example, 4K at 30. But you've got other settings, 1080 at 60 or even 720p at 30. One really nice thing that they do here is they list the file size that each one will take up on the memory or the storage of the phone. And if you'll notice, 720p will obviously take up less space than the 1080 30 and then the 1080 60. And then ultimately 4K takes up about 3 times the size of traditional 1080 HD. So you got to decide whether 4K is worth it or not when you're about to shoot your video. So also you can set up the slow-mo and it'll default to whatever you pick. The slow-mo that we like is the 1080 120 frames per second. That gives a great slow-mo effect and still has nice quality. Just a quick reminder, whenever you're shooting video, you should always put your phone in airplane mode. That way you won't get a unwanted call or text that would interrupt your recording. All right, up next, we're going to shoot some video. So remember, turn the camera on and go into landscape mode. Landscape mode. Do not shoot with the phone vertically. No, no, no. Landscape mode all the way. Also wanted to show you another way to fire up the camera, and that is holding down the 3D touch features of the latest phone. You can select to record a video, record slow-mo, take a photo, or take a selfie, which is nice because that way it goes directly to the recording function you want instead of having to fumble with it. And when you just turn the phone on, you'll be in auto exposure and auto focus. The phone will move around and do various auto features, but that's not what we want. We want to have manual control over what we're doing. And so we suggest tapping on the screen and pulling up this little exposure slider, and that way you can set the exposure of the shot and shoot from there. Now, if you want to completely lock it down, you press on the screen and hold it down, and then you'll see at the top of the screen, you've got AEAF lock, auto exposure, autofocus lock. And then from there, you can move it around and nothing will change at all. It'll lock the exposure, focus, and white balance. And so let's record some video here. This is the actual video, nothing too exciting, just showing the 4K image. Now this is in a HD show. We've edited the show in HD, so this footage is not in 4K, but it was shot in 4K. Once you shoot the video, you want to get it off your phone, because especially if you're shooting 4K, you don't want to have these huge files eating up all your storage space. One of the things that's nice about the later iOS, as long as you have a later computer as well, is using AirDrop. We did a previous video where we showed different ways to get footage off of a phone into an editor, and those still work. And that's connecting through iTunes or using software that transfers your photo and videos to another device, to a computer or to an iPad. But using AirDrop is really, really cool, and it's really, really fast. And so this is what we use almost exclusively now. Of course, you could also send stuff to YouTube or Facebook or Vimeo, and it's up to you, whatever your video's for, but typically when we shoot video, we're doing it because we're going to edit, and we'll use AirDrop.
Okay, now let's focus on audio. While people will accept a less than quality video, they will be annoyed with a low quality audio. In the next clip, Drew Keller talks about the importance of creating a great audio.
How your video sounds will make or break your story. Most videos involve a person speaking, so you need to pay attention to the conditions that are around you, especially when you're indoors, like your office. For the best audio, stop and really listen to your surroundings. You may discover that silence is full of background noise. Noise that'll ruin your story. Can you hear the guy in the next office? How about a hallway conversation? The fan on your computer? What about music? If it's noisy, move, or ask people to be quiet. Turn off everything you don't need.
In order to create a great audio, you probably should use a microphone on the iPhone. An inexpensive option is to purchase a lavalier type microphone for your iPhone shown in the slide. These cost about $20. And finally, the music. The right song will convey emotion and telegraph to your audience how they should feel, or it will add humor to your story. However, you can't simply grab some music and begin using it, especially if you're planning on posting it on a public website. Buying a song from iTunes gives you the right to listen to the music, but does not give you the right to use it in your video that will be made public. For the most part, it's too much of a hassle to try and get a license to use songs controlled by private labels. However, there are plenty of sources on the web where you can download free or even inexpensive music you can license. There are some websites indicated on the slide above where you can find free or low-cost music. In the next slide, we can listen to Drew Keller talk about how best to integrate music into your project.
Sound is a critical part of your video. If your audience can't hear your message, well, they're not going to stick around. That seems pretty obvious. But music is also a critical component to creating successful videos. It gives your video texture, ambiance, and sets the emotional tone of your message. But not just any song will do under your video. First, what is the relationship between the subject and the tempo and style of your music? It has to match. If your story is serious and the cadence of the voice is slow, you can't have a jarring heavy metal song or some goofy tune in the background. It confuses the audience. The opposite is true too. If the scene is full of fast edits and quick activity, a slow melodic tune will change the entire atmosphere of your video. Your audience gets emotional cues from your music choices. Your songs tell them how to feel throughout your video. That means you need to establish your tone and your emotional destination before you choose your music. It'll make your song selection so much easier. And if you're adding music behind your narration, be it an interview or a voiceover, make certain you choose music that doesn't compete for the viewer's attention. Because frankly, if it's too loud, well, the result is a mess. And if it's too quiet, well, the audience is going to wonder why somebody left a radio on about 100 feet away. Finally, if there's a natural pause in your narration, it's a perfect time to bring the volume up and then back down of your music. It's a way to emphasize a point in your story. The other technique for using music in a video is called backtiming. Backtiming is when your song ends when your video ends. For this technique to work, you need to choose a song that has a clean ending. In other words, it resolves with the last note like this. Not just fading out like this. To backtime my song when I'm editing, first I find the end of my song. I align it with the end of my video.
Really cool.
And then extend the song backwards so it starts earlier in my story. Now, when the story ends, the song comes to a close.
Clouds is really cool.
One last note. Make certain that you use royalty-free or music you have the rights to. It's illegal to use copywritten content without permission. Don't just grab something on iTunes or pull something from a CD and put it into your video. That would be illegal. There are plenty of sources on the web where you can download free or inexpensive music that you can license. It can be frustrating to sift through the myriad of selections. But take the time to do it, because the alternative, stealing music, can be a career-ending move. Music is an incredible tool in your video. You can use it to set the tone of your story and to frame your message.
Okay, we are now ready for editing. The next video will give some guides to edit your iPhone video. The video is a little dated, but I have found it to be one of the best editing videos.
There are numerous ways to edit iPhone video. On your iPhone, on an iPad, or on a computer. Each one has its pluses and minuses. So let's take a look at the phone first. Editing on the same phone you shot the video on is probably the simplest way to go. You'll just need a video editing app like Apple's iMovie or Real Director. By the way, we're not doing tutorials on the actual apps. We're just giving you some general ideas on what we think are the best options for editing. So open your preferred editing app and start a new project. Then import your footage and start editing. Most of these apps only allow for basic cuts and dissolves, and also some basic video effects. You can add music too, either included from within the app or from your iTunes music library. Editing on the iPhone is cumbersome at best, but it does work and you actually can achieve some really great results. Once your video is edited, you can then send to a variety of places, including saving it to your camera roll. This is what we typically do. That way you can easily transfer that video to another device or hard drive for playback and or archiving. Now for editing on an iPad. This is a similar process to the iPhone, except of course you have a lot more screen real estate to work with, and a few more editing apps to choose from. But before we open an editing app, we'll need to get the footage into the iPad, unless of course you shot the video on it. But let's assume you're transferring the footage from one device to the other and not using iCloud or iTunes. So we're going to use an app called Photo Transfer. Make sure the iPhone and the iPad you're transferring between are on the same Wi-Fi network. Open the app on the iPhone and choose Send, then choose iPad, and then select the videos to transfer. Next, open the app on the iPad, choose Receive, then choose iPhone and select the device. Start the transfer and the videos will copy to the iPad. It is a bit of a slow process. Once the videos are copied, you're now ready to open an editing app, and one of our favorites is Avid Studio. Open the app, create a new project, and all of the media on your iPad will automatically load into the app. edit your project, and then, like on the iPhone, export the final video to your favorite destination site or save it to the camera roll. The final way is to edit your footage on a computer. This most likely applies to serious hobbyists or professional filmmakers. Typically speaking, using iPhoto on a Mac or simply browsing the iPhone as a camera on a PC is the fastest and easiest way to get the video files onto a computer. You can of course use the same photo transfer app as we did with the iPad, but it is pretty slow. The USB connection is really a much quicker way to go. For this example, we'll be using a Mac, but it works very similar on a PC. Connect to the USB cable from your phone to your computer. Open iPhoto and select the video files you'd like to transfer. Once transferred, right-click on a file to open it in the Finder. This will take you to its folder, where you'll then have direct access to the individual files. From here, it really depends on what editing software you'll be using. Most modern apps will import and playback the iPhone's H.264 video files without transcoding to a new codec. But if you prefer to go this route, you can use freeware like MPEG Streamclip to transcode to Apple ProRes or Avid DNX HD. Then the files will play back with ease and you'll be editing in no time. There are obviously lots of ways to edit video shot on an iPhone. These are just a few general tips to hopefully get you going in the right direction.
Here are some of my favorite editing video apps, though you might prefer others. Well, you've completed the module on video storytelling. Remember to follow the 9 principles. It might be helpful to have the story design principles in hand when you're creating your video. As you begin to craft your video, follow the narrative curve from the problem to the solution, to the value proposition, to the stakeholder value. It is important to create a storyboard for your video before you start filming. Then shoot your story. You don't have to be too critical when shooting, since you can edit out the bad takes. I strongly suggest using an external microphone so as to ensure a high quality audio. And finally, don't wait until the last minute to edit. This part often takes the most amount of time. Good luck, and I look forward to seeing your fabulous videos.